Good evening, Mek We Chat. Hello, Jerry.
Ready?
Yep, man.
Yeah, man.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Mek We Chat. This 19th day of September, the year of our Lord 2019, and 6 tropical systems are just scouting about. They say they're like roaches
Including
out there.
Jerry.
I didn't say that yet. Jerry, Jerry only gets involved in record-breaking stuff. Come on, understand.
Oh,
Come
jeez.
on. Headed towards
Please.
hurricane force. But it has been quite a season. Quite a season it has been so far. To those of you joining us, this is another evening for Mek We Chat as we come to look at some of the issues that we think are important. We put them forward for discussion and invite your participation, whether it's on Facebook. Otherwise, join us. At the controls, as usual, George, His Excellency Grant. Margaret is there in New York.
Yes.
Our producer, will now take it away.
Good evening, folks. And I always like to say my own welcome.
No. So you mean
I
mine
don't-
for waste?
No, yours go out, and the folks get another welcome to Mek
I
We
see.
Chat.
I
They
see.
get a big thank you for joining us on the happiest place on radio. We're so
All right.
glad when Thursday 8 o'clock come. We can't wait. Look, Margaret showing teeth, Jerry showing teeth, George showing teeth and trying to hide it.
I know, right? I know.
But we're so happy, we're so glad when we meet here. You know why? Because we all share a common objective here. And it's good to be among people who share a common objective. And you know what the other reason is? We don't always agree. Those of us here and the rest of the suspects, there are many things we do not agree on. But we do not lose sight of the fact that there are some big things that we would all like to see fall into place. And one of the main issues that we all agree on is good governance. And that is why we get together here every Thursday on Mek We Chat, because good governance is at the core of what we do. We are not naive, we're not idiots. So we're not asking for perfection, but we want some systems that work.
Yep.
That is all we want. Because if some people know that they will go to jail, it will make a difference. If some people know that they will be exposed, it will make a difference. We just want some systems that work. So what you want about the United States, The United States have some systems that work. And in recent times, we have seen people hang themselves, kill themselves in jail, rather than face the music because they know it didn't work.
You sure they killed themselves?
Kill or be killed.
Well, they're dead.
Kill or be killed.
Right.
Exactly.
So the system is not always fair. It doesn't always get it right, but you know what? It works. But in our Caribbean, oh my goodness, we have it hard. We have it hard. And folks, our featured country tonight is Dominica. So that
Wait.
Dominican there better hurry up.
Look who joined us tonight.
I tell you, Welcome, Mr. Richards. Not take that from Jerry. Not even waiting till it come back.
Man,
So-
it's chalk I looking for the chalky foot.
Oh gosh, that is a new one. It's the first I hearing that one. Chalky
That's
foot.
that's Eastern Caribbean thing. Chalky foot.
Oh, boy. Yes, so we're waiting on that Dominican. Not waiting on him, telling him to hurry up and
I
finish
don't
what
think
he's
y'all can
eating.
handle Dominica tonight.
That's exactly why you want it.
Honestly, I really don't feel y'all are ready for Dominica tonight.
Well, we have to start, you know. If we're ever wait till we're ready, we'll probably never be ready. So might as well we jump in.
Wow.
Just as well. So Dominica is our featured island tonight. And if Dominica does not take up the whole program, we want to look at how Mr. Rowley has decided to try and extend the political influence on the media to the BBC. I like that one bad. So when we finish with Dominica, we talk about political influence on the media and Rowley's rage against the BBC. Welcome, Afi. Good to see you. And I'm handing back to Mr. Jerry George, our suspect in chief.
Well, as you heard, we have quite a number of things, and at the beginning, well, the focus is going to be Dominica. Today, Dominica even have given themselves a holiday to celebrate the passage of Hurricane Maria 2 years ago. Kind of belated decision at observing it. But our correspondent, our suspect from Dominica will tell us all about that. Already he says we can't handle it. But which one you want to take first? Dominica, you want to go to the media?
No, I want to start with Dominica because
Yes,
you know the media is a kind of rabbit hole. So let us go with Dominica.
So welcome, Atherton Martin.
I thought
Yes.
we were going to start with Hurricane Jerry.
I know, right? Exactly.
You're safe, man. You're safe.
You know,
He's safe.
he's sitting down there smiling and laughing and giggling, and he's threatening the rest of the region.
You know.
I right here, all I could see popping up is all kind of things about Jerry. All who want had all the things in their mind to say, but you don't know saying it.
And it's coincidental that it's 6 of us here tonight, you know, because Jerry out there being part of a gang of 6. Next thing they say is us.
I tell you.
So who is Umberto Richardson?
It's not we. It's not we. We're not there.
Richie, your audio very low.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
All right, so Ati, take it away.
It's honestly it has been so. There's a word that a fella coined in Dominica: discombobulating.
I know
I
that
hear
word.
that in easy. I hear that in years.
You hear it elsewhere?
Yeah, I've heard that
I
before.
mean, it's a term that captures. It's kind of like an animata, poetic word that captures when
Everything.
things really begin to cause chaos and confusion. Tonight, I think Beverly, you are so right, or Jerry, you're so right. We seem to we are facing an election. We are in the middle, well, not in the middle. We're in the middle of the hurricane season, but we have 2 hurricane seasons running side by side. One is a physiological climatic event, and the other one is a political human event. And but they are demonstrating the same kind of unpredictability, and that has become the pattern of these physical storms in these periods of climate change. We on Sunday, there was a political rally by the Dominica Labour Party, which is the incumbent party, and the Prime Minister announced a half-day holiday on Thursday. A half-day holiday on Thursday in order to permit people to attend this celebratory event, which was being held in the sports stadium this evening. Interestingly, that same sports stadium was not able to accommodate a cricket match a cricket game, an international cricket game, just a few weeks ago because the lights were not working in the stadium. By some magic, it appears that that problem, which prevented the cricket match from coming to Dominica, that problem may have been resolved for tonight. And and then 2 days later, which is that by Tuesday, we heard an announcement that there was going to be a full day holiday. And that pronouncement was signed by the president and whatnot. So people were really quite confused. Is it a half-day holiday? Is it a full-day holiday? And what is the holiday about? Well, we kept hearing things about celebrating and remembering the events of September 18th, 2017. Now, in most numeric cycles, 18 precedes 19. And so the 18th came, which was the actual date of the anniversary of the impact of the hurricane, but nothing happened. On the 19th, he chose to celebrate the second anniversary of an event that occurred on the 18th, 2 years ago. And so discombobulation became the order of the day. What's the significance of this? And then people realized that there were some other things about the numbers. The numerics, remember, these are Catholic countries. Most of our islands are more largely Catholic countries, and which means superstition is rife. People believe in Sukuya and Lukau and all kind of things, and you voodoo and whatnot. So the numbers play heavily. So people took a look at the dates, and the date for the actual event, which is today, is the 19th of the 9th month in the year 2019. There are 3 nines in that sequence of numbers, which if you turn the numbers upside down, become 3 6s. And hey, hey, you don't need to give our people more than that. All kinds of hornets nests and other hornets nests, and so on. And then you add to that, the fact that you're spending $1.8 million to put on a show that's running from 4 o'clock and will end probably at, I don't know, 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. $1.8 million.
What is that?
At a time when you've been asked over 5 weeks ago to explain the absence of $1.2 billion in your budget, which you agree exists, but just wasn't put into the budget, but you agree it's in an escrow account, and you're refusing to say where and who are the signatories on that escrow account. But you found another 1.8 million to put on this event. What is the purpose of the event? To mark the passage of Maria.
So this is a national event paid for by the taxpayers of Dominica.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And part of a big chunk of that is $100,000 goes to one artist coming from the United States. You see? 100.
Are you serious?
Absolutely.
Better go and sing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
those are the rates. Those are the rates. And that's a low rate.
That's a low rate.
That is the appearance fee. That is the appearance fee, not including the cost of bringing her and an entire orchestra from the United States to Dominica.
And I could sing for the low fee,
So the 100 grand is the fee, is the appearance fee, and the rest is, well, who knows how much, And then there's we have persons from Barbados, we have persons from all over the place, and we have a few local artists like Ophelia and Michael Henderson, and it's ending with one of our hottest bands, Triple K International.
Triple K.
Bouillon. Now, it was first billed as a religious, kind of prayerful kind of event and so on, and people must come and it's time to give thanks.
Hold on again, Afi.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about superstition. So you have 666 and you have KKK.
Mm-hmm. Triple K.
Be something like that.
That's another. And we've had our experience with that. So now, what's the significance of all of this? This is happening, during a period when we could be 5 weeks away from the election, we could be 12 weeks away, or we could be 5 months away, because elections can be held are actually finally due in May of 2020. But his handlers, largely out of Barbados, have told him that if the longer he holds on, the more difficult it's going to be for him to win. But he's not finding that gap in the woodwork, which in his view would allow him a clear shot at retaining his winning. Polls that have been done, independent polls by Dominican pollster, and polls by his own people, the guy from Barbados whose name eludes me right now.
Peter.
Peter Wickham. His polls are all telling him that he's losing. And his polls are telling him mostly, and very disturbingly, the last polls done both by his people and by an independent pollster are that between 30 and 38% of laborites who were to whom the question was put have indicated that they are not planning to vote. So in other words, his support base appears to have walked away from him, or is appearing to walk away. So that makes it extremely difficult for him to guarantee himself and whoever else any kind of victory. The issues that confront him are financial and fiscal accountability of an enormous amount. The issues that confront him have to do with the citizenship program that is exploding in his face. And I'm sorry Dwyer is not here tonight, because, a lot of the things that we've been talking about, and I know Dwyer had a slightly different view, have exploded. I mean, in a stark nakedness, because there is a hidden component to the CBI, the Citizenship by Investment Program. And while they advertise, they have two ways in which you can get a passport. He has introduced a third way, which is not part of the official program, which has no legislative authority to it, but which is where billions of dollars have been disappearing. In fact, interestingly, one of the biggest businessmen in the country, one of the Nassifs, Mr. Gregor Nassif, wrote an open letter challenging Lennox Linton, leader of the opposition, and demanding an apology from him for raising the issue of inconsistencies and impropriety in the CBI, etc., etc. Really? But interestingly, in his letter, Mr. Nassif let a few things slip out. Whether it was deliberate or accidental, nobody knows. One of the things he let slip out is this. Here we are making a huge problem about $1.2 billion that is missing only from sales in 1 year, 2018-2019. Mr. Nassif in his letter reminds us that between 2014 and 2019, billions of dollars came through the CBI program into the Dominican economy.
I've asked that question. Yeah.
So we realize we're really only skimming the surface here. And in fact, that is about the same time that MMCE, the Canadian firm, with whom the special arrangements for housing construction in Dominica exist, that Canadian firm has been active from just around that time, 2014, which was the last election year. So just before the last election year, that company became active, and he became active under a special dispensation, to quote the Prime Minister, a special dispensation to allow funds to be raised for housing, whereby passports were given. An undisclosed number of Dominican passports were given to this company to go out into the world and sell and raise money. And that money did not go into the treasury, it went into an escrow account, which we still don't know where it is. And that escrow account money is what is being used, reportedly, to build houses. Independent engineers and architects have done an assessment of all the houses that have been built in the country under that program. The figure does not come up to $300 million.
But Ati, $300 million could build almost every house in America. I'm sorry.
Could build what?
Almost every house.
Every house, yeah.
It's US dollars, eh?
No. Where what I'm quoting here.
Okay, even so, I still stand by that. I still stand by that.
No. Well, let me put it this way.
No, I still stand by the fact that it could be almost build every house in Dominica.
Well, not really. People are building billion-dollar homes, etc., etc.
Oh yeah?
No, but Ati, isn't this affordable housing?
Well, let me put it this way. The number of housing units that have been built average out at about $300,000 to $400,000 per unit. And less than 1,000 of them have been built. So you do the math. Between 2014 and now, less than 1,000, or approximately 890 units have been built at an average cost of between $300,000 and $400,000 EC dollars per unit.
And what has been the uptake? How many of those houses have been sold?
They're not sold; they are given away.
Or given away?
Yes.
Interesting.
These houses are not sold; they are given away. But the interesting thing is that the amount, the formulas associated with these houses, as was revealed by the 2018-2019 numbers, indicate that the actual amounts generated by MMC were closer to $1 billion. So the question arises, if you have spent $300 or even $400 million, what happened to the rest of the money? Because the money that goes into the building of hotels, like under the real estate option, the money that goes into what we call the diversification fund, which is equivalent to the sugar fund in St. Kitts, all these funds are fully accounted for. But what is not accounted for is the number of passports. We have sold close to 40,000 passports. That's what we're finding out.
Wow.
The population of Dominica is 70,000, maybe less. And in the last 5 to 7 years, 30 to 40,000 passports have disappeared. On one project, the Kempinski project in Portsmouth, the gentleman asked for and got 800 passports. That's how they finance these things now. They don't come with costings and numbers in terms of indicating what the square foot cost is going to be and how much money they need. They tell you how many passports they want. So they were given 800 passports.
And hold on, right. So they were given 800 passports. Are they told how much to sell these passports for?
They sold, I'm going to give you the numbers. They sold those 800 passports and generated $195 million US dollars. Do the math. Because there's no upper limit on what a passport can be sold for. There's just a floor limit. So these passports can be sold at any price. So they report in their accounts that they have sold 800 passports and generated $195 million US dollars.
Good, that's what they told us.
They report that the hotel cost $80 million to build. The hotel is built. 80 taken away from 195 million is what?
115.
It's,
150.
Right? Right? Then
This
we
is
have
Joe.
also just accidentally discovered, that there were 3 gentlemen who facilitated the deal of selling the passports. 2 of them received finder's fees each of 30 million US dollar.
Wow.
wow.
Right? So 80
Wow.
plus 30 plus 30 is how much? 140.
40. Yeah.
From 195, that leaves how much?
That makes it 54.
So here's how we found
55.
out about this. We found out about this because the 3rd character, who lives in New York,
Make noise.
didn't get his finder's fee. So he's suing the other 2 and the Kempinski Hotel Group for his money. And in his deposition to the court, the federal court in the state of New York, in New York City, all of that is disclosed as the data, and what he's submitting for and asking the court to get him. He wants all the accounts of that hotel, all the accounts of the company which he was engaged with in selling the passports, so that he can determine in truth and in fact that the passports were in fact sold, that they were sold at whatever price, that the hotel was in fact built at that cost, and the money that remains is X, so he can demand his finder's fee. So you understand here, and this is one project.
But I think that man might be doing Dominica a favor, you know. No, I'm serious, because it has
He
to go
did
to
us a favor.
Mm-hmm.
He did us a favor. Here's you want to know who that man is. That man is somebody called Paolo Zampoli of Italian extract, who happens to be our deputy UN ambassador in our UN embassy in New York. So he's an employee of the state, operating as a finder for selling Dominican passport, and now waiting to collect, and suing his 2 partners who have collected, but he hasn't.
And the country. You see the country
And the
winning.
country-
I have a question on the housing, Ati. You say that these houses have been under construction since 2014. So
They started building in 2014, yeah.
2014, okay. So obviously these were not Hurricane Maria houses.
No.
So was there a different housing project for people who lost their houses in the hurricane?
Yeah, they started building apartments. So the houses that are being built nowadays is apartment housing, and that's an interesting cultural challenge. Remember, the people that are being moved into these 3-story apartment buildings are people who are rural people who lived in the countryside, had their yard with their little fowl and their little goat grazing and some gardening and so forth and so on. And all of a sudden they are moved into 3-story apartments.
That's
So
my point.
these are not independent, detached houses. That is what
and these apartments are all in the urban area?
No, they're in what can be called the suburbs of the villages.
Okay.
On the edges of the villages.
But I made that same observation myself, because I know Dominica. And up in Castle Bruce and these places, when I see stuff, I'm going like, those things just seem out of place.
Absolutely.
Completely out of place.
In fact, the apartment complex you refer to in Castle Bruce is built on a floodplain.
Oh.
That entire area floods regularly when the rivers overflow, when the river overflows. Another set of houses were built in an area which is actually in the catchment area for the water supply for what used to be Lubia water. So think of waste disposal, sewage. The Kempinski Hotel was built without the benefit of an EIA. It was built in wetlands.
So the wetlands were drained?
They were filled in with concrete. They were not drained. They poured concrete until the concrete sat for a while, long enough for them to put buildings on them.
What?
Absolutely. And there was no EIA done. We cannot find any evidence of sewage treatment facilities. So I can give you one guess as to where all the sewage from 160 rooms is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, these are very serious issues. And Kempinski is a 5- and 6-star brand. I don't think it's going to look nice when the papers start carrying these kinds of stories about Kempinski, which they will, because we will get those stories out into those international newspapers.
Actually, where's Kempinski from? Where's their home base?
Their home base is actually in Europe, UK,
okay.
And yeah.
So that's an EU issue.
Yeah, it's an EU issue, and the EU tends to be quite serious about these kinds of considerations. But okay, but back to the politics. What's the politics? Well, you know, so far there have been about 12 major political rallies held by the Labour Party to launch their candidates. Each one of them is estimated to have cost about $1.3, $1.5 million.
Rallies?
Rallies?
Rallies.
That is just ridiculous.
Rallies. Rallies.
Well,
In a poor country like Dominica, man?
Yeah, man.
There was already
How much man say they make it in the passport on the CBI?
Well, you know, it's where does that kind of money come from except from a source like that? I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that is why I asked distinctively about the public holiday, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of these events that are being held are party events.
Yeah, they are.
And then you have others that are being held as national events.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when things are happening in this kind of atmosphere, it's very easy for people to blur the lines, and you don't know what is national, you don't know what is party, and you really don't know where the money is coming from to fund either of them.
Except
it is very clear.
Ati, I don't mean to stop the political debate, but I think the most critical thing here is beyond the politics is to follow the money first.
Yes.
Yeah,
right.
That is the politics.
The money is the politics.
The rallies and all that kind of stuff will fall into place later. You were saying that there were 2 other gentlemen who were compensated.
Yeah.
European.
Welcome, Catherine.
Excuse me?
European.
Welcome to Catherine.
Oh, good night, Catherine.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
What's up?
Made it on.
Last,
Good
I
Richie.
had some problem with my laptop logging in this today. So.
Okay.
Okay, man. Here I am.
You need to get a Mac.
Yeah, I need to.
Yeah, I think, yeah, so the 2 other guys who were compensating, are they from Europe also?
No, they're from the US.
Now we're beginning to talk.
No, we have real
Now
stories.
we're beginning to talk.
And that's why the guy's taking them to court in the US. And there's also a court case in the UK, because that is how they catch the Kempinski people.
When you say catch, what do you mean by the catch?
That is, because that's the named area that has legal jurisdiction over Kempinski is in the UK.
Yeah, but you say they've been catched. I mean,
yeah.
Somebody's been arrested or something like that?
No, not yet. Nobody been arrested.
All right. Yeah, no, just sorry for being granular.
No. It is catch, meaning that you see, these things are happening in our country. Our economy largely has shut down. Agriculture shut down. Tourism, literally, we don't know what's going to happen. The season's supposed to be open, but who knows? And you know, people leaving the country. We estimate our resident population now at somewhere between 50 and 53,000 because Dominicans have left and are leaving since after the storm, etc. So there is a situation where it's open political economic warfare. The economic warfare is in the area of fiscal and finance mismanagement. Because, for example, the Labour Party buys a building in the middle of the town, in the middle of the capital city, $300 per square foot. They buy a building. It costs them about $1.3 million. They repair, refurbish, and completely equip that building and put a thing on it called Labour Party House. In other words, so where the Labour Party has no known record of raising money, the Labour Party has no known record of submitting accounts to anybody at any time. So that money has come from somewhere. So, in other words, we're following the money. We're following the money. And this election is about holding people accountable who have been given the authority and the responsibility for looking after our accounts. And in that regard, it's not just the politicians that will end up being held accountable. It's senior public officials who have a constitutional mandate, right? And are under general orders of the public service to ensure that these kinds of things don't happen. You still have red clinics going on. The red clinic, people go, they wear something red, they go up to the Prime Minister's office and they come down with anywhere between $500 and $10,000 cash.
Wow.
And that is every Wednesday morning. And you have crowds of hundreds of people. And that is they assemble on the ground floor of the financial center of the country. If you have legitimate business in that building, you have to be asking people, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, until you get to the elevators.
So basically you're saying party business is being done during the time of that the public.
Wednesday mornings, Jerry.
Wednesday morning. And we have something called a cool out where people receive cash money. Where does that money come from? He used to pat himself on the back and say, we have to defend the CBI because it's the only game in town. Well, guess what? It's turned around and it's boomerang. If it is the only game in town, then it is the only source of funds, of money.
Yeah.
Clearly. So account for it. And
okay, Ati, let's take a break because I just realized you're kind of running away time-wise. So George, could you just start us in there? Don't mind.
Because your vehicle is a necessity, being roadworthy is critical. Hubbard's Motor Department introduces its new tire and battery sales and service outlet located at Building Supplies Compound in Grand Dams, close to the Sugar Mill Roundabout. Available are a wide range of competitively priced tires, maintenance-free batteries, oils and lubricants. Keeping in mind your busy schedule, this outlet is equipped to provide you with fast and reliable service. Simply drive in and you'll be delighted with your service experience. For more information, contact 440-2087. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
You don't know how many hurricanes will be coming this season, so you need to be prepared. At Hubbard's Hardware and Building Supply Departments and the Food Fair supermarkets, everything from canned foods, flashlights and batteries, to plywood, tarpaulin, lanterns, roof repair kits, water tanks, etc. are available. For over 90 years, we've helped you prepare for and recover from storms. Hubbard's Hardware, Food Fest Supermarkets, and the Grenadian General Insurance, an integral part of your hurricane preparedness plan.
Then he's
Alrighty, folks, we are back with tonight's edition of Mek We Chat. Starting top left, that's supposed to be Jerry, but Jerry seems to have disappeared. He's probably gone to get his mug of coffee or coconut water or whatever. I'm in the middle there at the top, and then, no, that's not Jerry. That was Margaret. Margaret who disappeared, but she's back. And then off to the right, there's Jerry George. Below Jerry, Catherine Edwards.
I noticed I getting blamed to Margaret, eh?
Yeah, boy. You're in the real doghouse, let me tell you. Just to the right of Catherine is Richardson Franklyn, if I'm not mistaken. He's out there in New Jersey. And then to his right, in Dominica, Mr. Atherton Martin. And the Queen herself. Below everybody, Beverley Sinclair.
Above.
Hello, folks. Doesn't matter where the Queen sits, she's the Queen.
like this is a hive.
Ati.
He's the slimmest people on the show that eating all the time, you know.
Ati.
Yeah.
And remember, Dennis Brown spoke about Queen Majesty.
Yes.
But
I have a
Oh.
No, I have a question on this Hurricane Maria celebration. First of all, this has to be something new in the Caribbean, because I can't remember any other island that has been devastated where you have a celebration, that kind of remembrance. You do see various recollection of what happened, but never a rally with entertainment and all of that. But this didn't happen last year, Ati.
No. This didn't happen at the first anniversary.
But maybe you guys didn't look at the flyers and notice that celebration was in quotation marks.
But it
No,
has
I
to be.
call it.
Pay attention to details.
This
You
biggest
know.
act of curry favoring I've ever seen by a government. 'Cause I cannot call it anything else.
It's
You're
an
trying
act
to-
of desperation, actually, because
Yeah, you're trying to get public opinion switch to yours in your favor. So
Yeah.
you do something like this you to make people feel good. It's that's all it is.
No, but that's why it doesn't make sense to me, because if you want to have an entertainment rally, do that. Why link it to the hurricane? Why?
But
What's the point?
How do you celebrate a hurricane? I mean,
Exactly. How do you do that? How do you do that?
I mean, I can see if you have a remembrance service or something like that.
Or a day of,
Hey,
a
the
day
man
of
is
prayer.
celebrating life. You guys need to think.
I
Celebrating
read a
the fact.
story.
Or you
I read
mean
a
it's
story
a
in
New
Barbados.
Orleans type thing.
You must see that. I read a story in the Barbados today about the remaking of Point Michelle, you know? And I read some of what the people said they went through. And in my mind, I couldn't put the two things together.
It's traumatic. You think
How do you
next
put
year,
those two things together?
wait, next year you go to the Bahamas and tell the people up there to have a big celebration for
Right on
Hurricane
Abaco.
Marian?
Right on
Right
Abaco.
in the middle of Abaco?
it's crazy.
Madness.
Well,
No.
the only explanation I've been able to come up with is the truth is that they are losing ground. And losing ground for a bunch of guys who for the last 14 or 15 years have been raping the treasury and raping the country, a tiny little country, can only mean one thing, that they're staring a jail cell in the face. And I think the fear level in them, the fright level in them is very high. You can hear it in their utterances. You're hearing them misspeak a lot at their rallies. In fact, one new candidate misspoke and repeated the slogan of the opposition party.
Oh dear.
Change is a must. Yeah. And another one says, you must put aside, when you go into the polling booth, you must put aside all sentimentality and forget all colors. So
very good. Very good.
That's better advice.
Yes.
So you have a lot of that happening. Where they're misspeaking, and you go to the meetings, and it's really just a lot of mépriser and attacking the personalities. I must say the opposition group has managed to hold itself well away from and above that kind of thing, and they tend to focus much more clearly on issues and projects and plans and so forth. But in reality, that has meant a lot of money is being given out. Building material that had come in for the same Maria that they're celebrating, lumber, windows, doors, etc., are now appearing.
Ati,
yes?
I could corroborate that. Somebody who knows Dominica told me that yesterday. He said, Jerry, you have no idea of the amount of stuff that came in for Maria that has still not been distributed and is now forming. The person even told me, I saw a check for $20,000. He said, that's the kind of money that they're giving people now.
They're handing out money.
I said, he said, Jerry, I'm telling you, I saw.
Yeah.
And
that is crazy.
The other issue I need to ask Ati about, I have been hearing that some gun licenses are being given to thugs to become bodyguards for one of the candidates.
Well, the thugs have been bold enough to request permits for their guns, which they already have, by the way. And the reason given, because you have to put a reason, like a businessman would say, well, I sometimes travel late at night and I need, my security. The reason put on the forms for these known gangsters, and these are not just ordinary gangsters, these are not just purse pullers and so on. These guys have been in court for murder.
Oh?
Ouch.
These are serious.
Wow.
These are serious guys. Okay?
What?
And yes. And some politicians intervened and interfered and called and made some calls, and that's why they are free. That's why they're on the streets. And these guys put the reason for them wanting permits for their armaments is to provide protection to Melissa Skerritt, wife of the Prime Minister, who already has a full detail.
You're joking, right?
No, I'm not joking.
Tell us how this program is joking, man.
Joking is the name of a Chinaman who lives on St. Vincent Street in Spain. Joking. He used to have a restaurant. That's who he is. We are not joking here. We're not joking.
Wow.
This is very serious stuff.
You see, let me stick a pin in here. And when the Prime Minister of Grenada was asked about his marital status, he said people don't go there. You see why it is important for public figures' marital status to be known.
Mm-hmm.
Right, back to Dominica.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you all can handle it. I mean, and this is actually we haven't really come to the core matters yet. I mean, I don't even think I'm at liberty to speak publicly on some of these other matters because.
No, but that last thing you just said, Ati, is so scary. It is not funny.
Exactly.
Yeah. These are non hit people,
Right.
And guys.
And the message is clear. We will kill you for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. And instead of people being turned down outright, the commissioner is considering the applications. So we and then on top of that you have all the other cases.
So wait. So help me to understand it. You're going to issue licenses for guns that are already held. So you issue a license for an illegal firearm?
Yes.
Illegal firearms, yes.
So this is baptism for the firearm.
Mm-hmm. Even if it
I'm
might have
confused.
been used in crime before.
Exactly.
Let me explain something to you. The Prime Minister, after Hurricane Maria, had moved in his where he was staying got destroyed, and he moved into another government-owned building in another area. And then several months later, he moved into another building. Let me tell you that where he moved into and where he is today. He moved into the presidential palace.
I've heard that story.
So you now have the president of the country and the prime minister of the country living in the same building.
I heard that.
Right? That is a $27 million complex.
Crazy.
Built by the Chinese for Dominica as a loan.
A loan?
Yes. A $10 million US loan.
For one building?
It's a complex.
I know.
Yeah. It's several buildings, but the largest building and the most imposing building is the president's
palace
residence. Yeah. And so a portion of that building was redesigned and set up so that the prime minister could move in. So he lives there now. Now this is after having built a $4 million home for himself in his home village. He lives there. But just to help you understand the sinister nature of things that are happening, because people don't understand really what's happening in Dominica. It's like we don't really understand. One of these days, the Prime Minister hosted a cocktail party in his portion of the building for the bandits. The same bandits. And there he was, and it was videotaped, and it was shown around. There he was serving them drinks. The bandits, the gangsters, the motorcycle operators.
Why are you have Ati making up all these stories on it tonight? Why? Because them can't Ati. No man, nah.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Fiction, I agree.
That's what I think, Pilati. Exactly. That is what happened.
We have not been paying attention. We have not been paying attention. I've been trying to tell you all that if you want to see where the rest of the Caribbean is headed, watch Dominica. Watch Dominica. Where a guy who, when he first entered politics, did not own a bicycle. He was a teacher. He ends up owning 12 villas, each one of them. In 8 years, he owns 12 villas valued at $1 million each. He has since sold those 12 villas to the same people who built the Kempinski Hotel.
And who that man is? Who that man is?
That man is our Prime Minister.
Oh, I thought. But I thought there was a lot of denial about who owned those villas.
There was denial, but there was never any successful presentation of the evidence behind that. He had one of his friends front the exercise for him. The guy lived opposite the road from the villas. And he said, when the magistrate asked the guy, well, how did you finance this? Did you get loans and so forth and so on? The guy said, no, I sold crabs.
That's the crab lice.
Crab lice. I sold crabs. At the same time the villas were being built, that guy who was the presumed owner, the company in which he was involved was bankrupt. The company suddenly came back to life when the villas were being built. It was a hardware company selling wood and things like that. And all the wood to build those villas came through that hardware company, which brought it back to life. When those Huh?
Wood washing.
With what?
Wood washing.
Yes. 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 You might say that. So so those things have been happening. There was a reported sale of a building in the center of the capital city just 2 weeks ago. An abandoned building. Used to be the home of Jean Reese. You remember who Jean Reese is? The writer who wrote the Sagasso story about Dominica. Lennox Honeychurch's family.
Yeah.
That was where she lived. That building was recently sold for $3 million. I'll give you one guess as to who bought it.
Can I guess no more tonight?
Okay. All right. So,
I want
to know who buys it.
If you follow the dollars, the only people in the country who actually have money are people who are engaged in the CBI. The 5 or 6 attorneys who are engaged as agents or now some of them are agent investors are all cronies of the same man, the leader of the country. They all at one time or other represented him in private matters, in court or whatever. And today they are the architects. They are the agents of the CBI program. Nobody else.
But another hot issue in Dominica at this time is the issue of election reform, because there is actually a citizens group agitating for election reform.
Yeah.
At least the cleansing of the voters list before the next election. But there was some development with that recently as well.
Well, I mean, all the groups, because I must say there's more than one group now involved. There's a grouping that involves the churches and trade unions now. Interestingly, there's a really interesting revival of the activism of the 60s and 70s, in the sense that people say enough is enough.
Yeah, I see that.
And they actually all brought pressure to bear on the Electoral Commission, etc. But this 3 out of the 5 members of the Electoral Commission are lawyers appointed by the Prime Minister. And so they're not busy to cleanse the list. So the list remains at over 75,000, while the population has declined to under 50,000. And the whole idea of keeping an inflated list is that they would bring people in and have people vote against the names of persons who no longer are alive. Because we don't have an arrangement like most other Caribbean countries have, where you have to prove who you are before you vote by presenting an ID card. We do not have ID cards. Jerry George can come to Dominica and go to a polling station and say, my name is Afimate. And if nobody challenges it, he votes as Afimate. No,
and go somewhere else and vote too.
And we're still using this little purple ink on our finger, and people have found ways to completely clinically remove the ink in 5 minutes.
And
you just go to a station and vote.
An electoral official had offered me that once, me personally.
Yeah.
Because I have Raynaud syndrome, so I don't put my finger in the ink like other people do. And she said, no, man, you can put the finger in the ink and just want to wash it off. See, I have the soap here. I just give you and you wash it off one
You mean
time.
you get off of that?
Yeah.
So
I made sure that the supervisor of elections heard of it. I don't know what he did. I don't know what happened, but I had to tell him, because I don't know how many other people were given things to go wash off the figure after them.
So we don't have a clean list and we don't have ID cards. So that means, for instance, we have a lot of Haitians here now, as you have throughout much of the Caribbean, as you can see in Bahamas, you can see in St. Lucia, you can see in Guadeloupe, in Martinique, all over the region. Because, the situation in Haiti is not conducive to all of them staying there. So they move.
So, Ati, how come? Hold on 1 sec. Because how come this week they reintroduced the visa requirement? What prompted that?
Well, I think their own people are beginning to complain. For example, in Portsmouth, with the loss of Ross University, the occupancy for all these apartment buildings and housing in the Portsmouth area is zero. It used to be almost 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So the Haitians come in, and one Haitian person would say, I want to rent an apartment. Yeah, they'll agree and rent. But pretty soon, 10, 15, or 20 of them are living in the apartment.
Yep.
So I think just before we go to the break, what is the situation with this report that was supposed to be provided on electoral reform?
We haven't seen it yet. This report you're referring to is the result of a joint commission between CARICOM, the Commonwealth Secretariat, and the OAS, which was here several weeks ago, a couple of months ago now. We expected to have the report last week. We were told that the only thing that was being done was the transmission letter for the report to the government. Up until now, it hasn't got here. I am suspecting, let me speculate, that one of the three organizations has a problem with the findings of the report. I'm suspecting that the findings of the report will probably advocate very strongly the cleansing of the list and the provision of ID cards prior to the next general election. That is going to be problematic for CARICOM to accept, because it will look like interference by CARICOM in the internal affairs of a CARICOM state.
Yeah, that's
so it sounds like, because both the Commonwealth Secretariat and the OAS for the previous two elections, 2014 and 2009, did make very strong recommendations that be done before the next poll, after 2009 and after 2014. So it would be highly surprising for their position to suddenly change. CARICOM has never made those recommendations, even if they have been also here as observer missions. So we are suspecting, we are surmising that there may be some difficulty in arriving at the proper language for the transmission letter, which generally sums up the recommendations and says, well, it is, and get this done by such and such a time, is our recommendation. And because it will interfere with the winning legacy of the honorable gentleman. Mm-hmm. And so, but hopefully it'll be here this week, Bev. I don't know if this week is tomorrow is Friday already, but it should have been here already, because they are fully aware of the election schedule as it is now. And and they're fully aware that the Prime Minister can legally and properly prorogue Parliament at any time. There are two challenges now. If he prorogues now, it means that our World Creole Festival will be a World Creole political festival. if he waits till after that, Christmas will be Santa Claus will have to come either dressed in red or blue. And he'll have to make.
Oh gosh! But it will be interesting to see what these groups will say when, because it's not if, when they do turn up as observers again under the same system where nothing has changed. It will be very interesting to see what they do and hear what they say.
True. But I notice none of you have asked about the involvement of Dominica in the Iran situation as it is unfolding now.
I have it in front of me on my phone, but I was giving you all the leeway. So go ahead.
Okay. All right.
We should probably take the break and come back.
Yeah.
You go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah.
Good morning, Grenlek Meter Reader.
Morning, Mr. Meterman. I'm glad I caught you. Last month, I got a very high bill, and I don't understand why.
Last month, we were not able to access your meter, so we had to estimate the bill. This will happen if we don't get an actual reading.
So, what can I do to ensure that my meter is easily accessible?
Well, you can get your licensed electrician to move your meter outside of the gate or directly in front of the house. That way, I'll have easy access and I won't have to deal with your dog.
Ah, Butch.
Yes, dogs can be a problem sometimes. On one occasion, I was attacked by a dog and police had to get involved. Customers who don't want to cage or tie their dogs should really move their meter and make it easily accessible.
Well, I'll consider that.
Thank you.
GRENLEC, energizing our Grenada.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Alrighty, folks, we are back with the usual suspects. And let's see, we do have a new face joining us. There she is, Catherine Edwards. Beverley!
Yes,
What about
George.
his Facebook, George? Any comments on Facebook?
Claude Putner here is saying, in Grenada, there's opposition in the parliament. In Dominica, it's different. They have opposition, so I don't understand. I don't understand what you're saying, Claude. He says, these leaders, why are they so greedy? Share with us. We know all you teething. Have a heart. We begging. Yeah. Margaret says, John, you're right. Dominica on the menu. 2 minutes, so no kickoff. All right. Go ahead, guys.
Yes, we
Yes,
have to
Ati.
ask.
Yeah.
Now we've had this situation with Iran coming full circle. All the questions of who bypass and circumvent using oil, the United Nations sanctions. Take it away.
Well, you remember there was a story that broke several years ago. I don't remember the year exactly, Jerry, where some 11 mega tankers had been flagged by Dominica, oil tankers.
About 2 years ago.
And those oil tankers were involved, based on surveillance camera pictures, etc., by the international community. They saw the Dominica flag was on tankers that were transferring oil from Iran to countries as far in Asia, as far as Asia. And this was in violation both of the UN and the US trade embargo against Iran at the time. When the story broke, our Prime Minister, accompanied by an attorney of his, one of his squad of attorneys, rushed off to Greece, where it turns out there was a company that had been registered by that attorney to provide Dominica flags to these 11 tankers. And so the Prime Minister and this attorney went to Greece, and whatever it is they did, but those flags disappeared from those tankers. But however, you remember a few years before that, our Prime Minister was in Macau and in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, and you remember there had been, we saw the photographs of this, our Prime Minister involved in cocktails and dinners. These guys were being driven around in Rolls-Royce Silver Clouds. and they would be their cutlery was gold, and they were, and then there was occasion on one occasion they had a cake cutting, and you remember the former UN ambassador from Antigua and Barbuda who died under
Ash.
John Ash. He was in the picture, and you remember that he was in the picture because he was involved. Subsequently, it was proven that he and others were involved in trying to persuade the UN to build this big IT center in Asia and to build one in Dominica. And so anyway, but what's significant to fast forward to the current situation is that a gentleman by the name of Ali Reza Monfared, who's Iranian by book and citizenship, but who it ends up having a Dominica diplomatic passport, and who it ends up having been appointed by the government of Iran to ensure the safety of financial transactions associated with trade with oil. He was a former head of the Secret Service of Iran, and who became such a good friend of our Prime Minister. The Prime Minister took fondly to referring to him as one of his very best friends. They were caught in picture cutting a cake, etc., etc. But this same Ali Reza Monfared, after that incident with the 11th Dominica flag tankers, was being sought both by his government, Iran, by the US, and by Interpol. Guess where he chose as his safe house? Dominica. This same Ali Reza.
I like that. His safe house, Dominica.
The man is a diplomat.
You're right.
Chose Dominica as his safe house. So he was here for 6 months while Interpol, quote unquote, was looking for him. But he was under the protection of the state. Lived in a big house provided by the state. He partied and feted all the government ministers and their operatives, etc., for 6 months, until he was eventually persuaded by a third country, look, it's time for you to give yourself up. And he was transported out of Dominica to the Dominican Republic, and from there he was picked up by the security forces, another Caribbean country, who delivered him to Iran via Moscow.
Another Caribbean country picked him up?
Another Caribbean country picked him up and delivered him to Iran.
No, listen. Who's that? Who that country be?
The Republic of Cuba.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You see, have we been following these things?
Oh, I have been.
I don't think.
I have been.
It's happening right here. Mm-hmm. And so he was picked up and brought to and delivered to Iran. In the meantime,
but hold on, Natty, say why? Because they have to take that route because they're thrown over the US. They were fearful.
He was picked up by Iran and delivered to Iran because he had robbed the Iranian government, who he was employed to protect their finances. He robbed them of several billion US dollars. And they wanted their money. So they brought him back to Iran. They had a small enticement to bring him back to Iran. They had arrested his father, who was in jail in Iran. So he came back. This guy went back to Iran. And a few days ago, a couple of weeks ago, right there on the international news, there was Ali Reza Monfared on trial.
On trial.
In Iran, in Tehran, Iran. Interestingly, wearing blue prison clothes. Not our Prime Minister's favorite color, But there it is. Now, what brought it to our attention was there was a certain document that was introduced in the evidence. And that document was a Dominica diplomatic passport.
Passport, correct.
Oh boy.
And so we may have to answer as a tiny little Caribbean state in this whole thing. And tonight I'm reading that things are warming up between Iran and the United States.
Yep.
The implications for us,
That's
for
looking good.
Dominican citizens living in the United States, what sort of repercussions could evolve if it evolves that we have colluded in assisting Iran avoid and evade international and bilateral trade embargoes? Because Ali Reza Monfared is not going down by
alone.
He's going to scratch and claw at anything or anyone who might keep him out of the gallows. Why are we there? What are the implications for us, for CARICOM, if it exists, for our region? What kind of folks could be in and out of our region, have been in and out of our region looking for this guy?
But Ati, I was making the point that the reason they took him on that route is that they were fearful if they flew over any territory that was US.
Western, yeah.
That they would have commanded the plane. That's why they had to take that route that they did at the time.
And these were direct flights, direct flights. They took him from Santo Domingo to Havana, Moscow, Tehran.
So Dominica is playing in some very big leagues.
I'm telling you.
We keep it the wrong company.
Yeah, not even big league, in the Super League.
I'm telling you. No, the fact that Dominica got themselves involved in trying to circumvent a United Nations sanction, to me, was incredulous. Absolutely incredulous.
That's right.
You know, and I don't know. You see, it's all of these things that threaten the Citizenship by Investment program.
Mm-hmm.
These are the real threats to the Citizenship by Investment program.
That program gone beyond threat long time.
Well, we know.
That program is just like Leah, going down.
Oh my God. But I don't see that program going down, you know, because does it still exist in St. Kitts Nevis?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
it does.
Exactly.
Now, don't be so sure, because the problem with all of that is that now you have the European Union pressing the Schengen business side of things. That is where the trust is in. Not that they will say, okay, you can't do it. But when they start to put in the roadblocks in the way, and Antigua already has found themselves not being able to sell as many of their passports as they would like because of how many issues they have.
Well, and you notice the correspondence bank from North America, they were leaving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who's a banker who told me how that whole situation unfolded in Dominica.
Yeah.
Where they told me that one day the banks just told the foreign banks, send back all of the money that they had in their possession. All. The next thing they knew, all the lawyers and all the people, agents, whoever had foreign bank accounts were called in and said, here's your check. We don't want it.
Take it back. We don't want it. And they tried to put it all in the National Bank, and they nearly sunk the National Bank.
Well, they tried it dead.
But the National Bank now had surplus money. They didn't know what to do with it. So they started putting it in funny places like Panama.
Mm-hmm. And you see, and the thing about it, the National Bank is at such risk if something ever happens. Dominica is shut down. Literally shut down. You know, people don't understand how dangerous this whole particular situation is, just looking at Dominica.
The Republic Bank of Trinidad and Tobago just purchased one of those foreign banks that actually gave back the money on the CBI, Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that process actually was kick-started not just by the languishing performance of our economy, but by some of these international financial concerns. Homeland Security had warned about that in the
They
US.
don't want to expose themselves to this.
No, but there's a task force, the FATF, Financial
Action Task Force.
Financial something task force. That they've been warning these folks about these things.
That's right.
The fact that our investigative procedures in these countries are so weak.
That's right.
That you have money laundering galore. I mean, I left Trinidad in 2010. I think 2011 or 12, it was like estimated 1 billion US in money laundering funds.
Mm-hmm.
So when you as a you have all your within these countries, they have their financial investigative units and such, and they're not performing up to par.
No.
After having so much training and such, then at some point in time, these guys, the powers that be said, "Hey, look, the game is over."
Richie, one of the people who involved in this told me this. Said, Jerry, listen. Sometimes it's not the person on the front line who is the problem, They say, listen, and this is somebody who in the system, right? They say, listen, here's how the thing goes. The person at the front line, the loans officer might decline a loan, giving a person a loan because it fits the AML requirements that they do that.
Mm-hmm.
They have a friend who sits on the board. And above them, the board makes a decision that that person must get the loan.
Mm-hmm.
And one of these people in one of these positions said, Jerry, that's what we know.
Yes,
and that is why we just pulling the plug on it all.
Yeah.
But here's why the system is
I was told again, the international banks stay away from dealing with the money transfer business. You know what they told me? They said, Jerry, what do these businesses deal in? Cash. They say, how do we know the last person that touched that cash before it came here? Until we could know that, we don't want any of that business.
It's called know your customer.
That's right. You know what? Let me tell you what that leads to. That leads to, unless technology takes this over, that leads to the indigenous banks becoming the banks that handle all of these transactions.
Yeah.
And the day any one of them is fingered, watch it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a serious, serious thing.
But
the only thing will save us right now is if technology takes over. Like, for example, the digital currency of the central bank.
Digital currency, yes.
Yeah. That's the only thing right now. But if one of these days they trace back some of that money that way, in St. Vincent, they had a case recently for money laundering, where all these people used to bring money into the country, divide up the money into euros, pounds, US. They had different people who took them through the money transfer into the different banks. All of the people who ever took those monies into the banks are dead. You go figure it. Every one of them were killed.
What bothers me most about the situation is not that it cannot be fixed. It's just a general laissez-faire kind of don't care calypso mentality attitude throughout our society at the highest, middle, and lower levels about these kinds of issues.
Yeah,
and that is
there seems to be no grappling with this as being important to our future.
It's a perfect segue, Afi, into our next topic, and that's the political influence in the media. Because if the fourth estate does not raise these issues and keep them active in people's mind, it's only a forum like this where you're going to hear these issues discussed. Or maybe in a public meeting somewhere where it is not sustained in the minds of people. And that is a critical element which is missing in our Caribbean countries today. We have this situation with Trinidad and Tobago, which is the one we had as our topic, where the BBC has done a documentary on the Venezuelans that Trinidad has taken in.
It is placed.
And, you know, and the Prime Minister of Trinidad has taken offense to the documentary because, you know, the BBC didn't come and speak with anybody in government to get the accurate figures before they put their thing together. So they've gone as far. He has gone as far as written to the government in the UK, Jerry,
Yeah.
to complain about the documentary that the BBC has put out. And it is this kind of ridiculousness that has overcome the media here in the Caribbean. Because when a media house puts out a story that some prime minister doesn't like, or some government minister or some other high-ranking official does not like, this is what happens. They turn around and berate the media house. The general manager get cussing, the reporter probably get fired. The whole team that put a documentary like that together probably get fired because somebody in government is upset about something which is published. And that is what has slowly killed media in the Caribbean, why issues like you have described, Aki, look at the depth, the magnitude, the gravity of these situations, and you would not pick up a newspaper from Dominica or anywhere else in the Caribbean for that matter and see a report on any of these things. Sometimes you get a glimpse of these things from some international press, Immigration Insider, or from the blogs that people like to run away from Reja, you know, or Monty Freezer, or somebody like this. You would get a little bit of something and then you pick it up and you read it and you say, what is Dominica right here they're talking about?
Yeah.
You know, but you do not see, and even when these things are published there, you would not see a local media house pick up the story and try to bring it to the minds of the people, because, you know, the majority of the population not going to be reading Connect Media, not going to be reading Monte Freezer, and you would not see the media do the work that the media is supposed to do and pick up the story and make it local and put it front and center for people to consume. It doesn't happen. And I say it without fear or favor, that it's because of the political influence on the media houses why they do not do these things anymore. Whether, and a lot of it is self-censorship.
That's what it is.
Good one.
That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Because sometimes you would provide information, as I have often done to colleagues and friends in the media, and say, well, you know, hey, this is a story. I mean, like I've been asking people in the media here, are you following what's going on in the UK? Are you following the Supreme Court sitting on the question of prorogation of the House and the balance of power between the Parliament, the court, and so on? And they say, what are you talking about?
Are you serious?
I mean, but you have access to BBC TV. I can go online any moment and watch.
Artie, it's not Dominica alone. I post some of these things on my page every day, like I post everything else. And I go back from time to time and see how they're consumed. Most of those stories have no indication that anybody read them. So our region just wants to stay ignorant. That's the only thing I could call it.
But there has to be a factor. What are the factors? What are the underlying factors?
Listen.
It wasn't always like that. There was a time when we were very interested in those issues and followed them.
No, these days, reporters walk behind politicians with the cameras and the microphones, and they have nothing to say except what the politicians say They just go back to the newsroom and click repeat, and that comes out as news. Nobody questions the politicians, nobody challenges what they say. I'll give you a big joke about Grenada. These past couple of weeks, there was an incident with a reporter and a senator where the reporter was trying to ask an elected MP question, which the elected MP had agreed to answer. But the senator, who is a junior minister in the Ministry of Information, decided that the elected MP could not answer the question. So he physically got in the way of that happening. During all of that, the reporter fell to the floor, right? She recorded audio of him screaming at her, oh, she's a liar, he didn't touch her, he rebuked that evil spirit in her, all kind of drama on the audio. And it was at the end of a government press conference, and not one single media host heard the story of that incident happening. None. Dead silence. But a week later, the senior minister in that ministry put out a statement that they did an investigation and there was no physical altercation. And all the media houses which did not carry a story now carrying a statement to say nothing happened.
Just ridiculous.
I have never seen anything so ridiculous in my life. As a journalist.
Listen, it has just gone overbearing. Seriously.
Absolutely ridiculous, because if nothing happened, the nothing that happened was not newsworthy. But a statement about the nothing that happened suddenly becomes newsworthy because it's some political figure say it. I have never seen the media look more ridiculous in my entire life. Ashamed, ashamed, ashamed.
Seriously. But Beverley, hold on, Matthew. You talk about the previous indication, the previous situation where the same journalist was trying to ask the U.S. ambassador a question.
Yeah. And the press secretary tried to prevent her from asking the U.S. ambassador a question.
When the U.S. ambassador said she wanted to answer.
She said the U.S. ambassador, of course, operate by different rules. She answered the question. But the press secretary get herself between the reporter and the U.S. ambassador, trying to prevent her from asking a question.
I mean, no.
Really? So when you talk about these political influences in the media and the fact that media people, both at the management and ownership level, have become so timid, because, and I don't know what they think that these politicians can do to them. We let them to serve. Why are we giving them more power than they have? We elect them to serve. And if you really want to do your work in a media house the way you are supposed to, part of that job is to keep elected officials accountable and on their toes. Do you think that this letter that Dr. Keith Rowley has written to the BBC is going to have any impact? That is just like chaff in the wind, that blowing away.
But the consular has already said it. He says the government of the UK does not get involved in what the media does. He told him. And his name is Mr. Stew. So he's in a stew.
The underlying causes, I think, go much further back. I think there has been a fairly radical shift in the primary and secondary school education curriculum and approach. And I've been looking at it because it's a program I'm getting ready to do on what has happened to science education in Dominica, but yes, in the Caribbean, and because a lot of kids are getting 8, 9, 10, and 11 CXC passes, and then you look at what those passes are in, and with few exceptions, they're non-science. And I'm saying, this is 2019. Back in the day, if you did 4 subjects or 5 subjects, 2 of them were science.
Yep.
Easily. And certainly there was math. And so, we somehow or other, we have distilled out the underpinnings of a modern society, which is education and knowledge of yourself, knowledge of the world, and knowledge of science. And I believe what we are harvesting now is the bitter results of two generations that actually don't even, although they have these gadgets, they have no idea what power is in those gadgets, what they
Exactly.
can do with it, because it's more about entertainment
That's right.
and fun and so on. So I really think that conversation has been blanked out, and so the results, as you talk about the behavior of the press, that is the result of a couple decades of missed education or non-education. And even when I look at the coverage of the Bahamas situation, who do I see there on the ground? I see white reporters from
Right.
Canada, from America, from the UK, and a couple locals and so. But where is our presence? Where is our take? Because it's we who are impacted most directly by these things. But I don't get it. I don't see it. I'm beginning to understand it. We have all distilled out the substance of our education, and so actually we become shells.
One of the problems right now they have in St. Vincent, and they've been talking about that here. Probably should talk, is the terrible situation with math results over the last year. And if you math is science, and therefore that is why we're not having any innovation in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
If I may.
Sure, you may.
This whole thing about education in the Caribbean, there's always the extreme. I mean, I must say, I have had bitter arguments with friends who says, well, you're only concerned about digits, you're an engineer, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is now today, if you look at a modern education system, they're even moving away from STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math.
Mm-hmm.
And they've put in the A.
STEAM.
STEAM, right? And the A would cover all the civics and the history and everything like that. But the whole idea is what you're trying to do is to provide a well-rounded product. And I think that's what Athy is saying is missing.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been found that, or it's projected, if you really want to be competitive in the 21st century and beyond, you have to be able to add value to technology, right? So as Athy was saying, instead of just using the thing, or whatever handset it is, right? Whether it's a phone, iPad, or whatever it is, we all have these gadgets around. But how many of us could go in there and say, okay, let me write a little strip of code to do something to it, right? So for example, in Estonia, at age 6 or 7, these kids are already learning to code, right? And the thing about it, Athy, is that it can be done in the Caribbean.
Yes, I'm sure.
Because in 2014, I was in Jamaica and put together a quick little team to teach girls, I think was the age 12 to 14 or something like that, how to code, right? And sure enough, there were some bumps as we began, and it ended up being a 4-week program rather than a 6-week program. But at the end of the day, every young lady in that class knew how to code and how to add value to technology.
And coding essentially is what again?
Is writing, program writing, the program lines,
Okay.
right?
Listen, I have always said this, Richie, that we have had with us for how much, 30, 40 years? I'm speaking case of St. Vincent, the Taiwanese. And instead of asking them to give us teachers in those areas, We line up behind 300 computers when they give us. And 6 months after the computers are, they can't work because people don't know how to use them. If I have always said, if we had just five teachers to teach us coding from the Taiwanese, a lot of our young people today would have been out on their own and really adding value, not just home alone. Just fine.
Jerry, you really don't need to go that far.
I agree.
There's something called Code Academy, right? Where you could sit down right in your home and learn to code.
No, that's now, I'm talking about over the years.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we're dealing now, going forward. Then there's also things like Python. I mean, you could sit and listen to a professor in your home and pick it up. Now, I, as an engineer, studied Fortran 4, which was absolute hell for me. And
tell me again.
and doing Python, I'm saying like, geez, this thing is really simple. And that's the whole idea behind it. It's not there's that much of a challenge, but we don't have the teachers, we don't have the ministers of education in the Caribbean who see a future, who has a vision as to where we're supposed to be going. I heard one guy in the Caribbean, I wouldn't call the country, came into office and started speaking about corporal punishment. Now in this country, I know you hit somebody's child at 8 o'clock in the morning, as you leave the school, somebody's going to take you out. So we need to focus on really getting our kids, our young people, to be able to be competitive in the 21st century and beyond. And that is by providing a well-rounded student. Because even though somebody may decide to study media and they have the whole idea of coding behind them, or at least know how to interpret it, they might find themselves finally, when they reach a certain level in media, saying, if I do so and so, that piece of code that I learned, I could do X, I could add X product to the game. And that's what it's all about, and that's what's missing in the region.
Practically, I would also wonder if is there any study anywhere in the Caribbean about the impact, the effect of e-government? Is there any place where we can see measurable change in, for instance, the consumption and use of paper, the speed of which communication is taking place within offices, between agencies, as a result of the proper use and application of digital communication? Are there studies like
okay, so I'm just finishing up a project in a major country in the Caribbean, wherein we're looking at a government network, right? But along with that, it's not just the technology again. You have to go back and you have to do business process re-engineering. Oh, I see there's somebody's house is being raided. Anyhow, you have to
London.
Ice.
No, not nice. I mean New York. I think
no,
it's
I said ice.
Yeah,
no, not ice. Nice, not nice.
I thought you said ice. I thought you said ice. But
ice, indeed.
My point is to ask us whether or not, how many years now have let's say we've been putting computers in offices?
No, listen, let me jump in here. Bev,
let me say, sorry to cut you. Let me tell you something. In 2012, I think it was, I was in some office, I think I was in Grenada, and I met a guy from St. Kitts. And the guy was explaining to me, he said, Richardson, when these secretaries write a letter for the minister, once the minister has signed the letter, you know what they do with that document? I said, no, usually you file it. He says, no, they just erase it. Sometimes I get documents from the Caribbean, and I'm sorry. You could tell that the person who just typed that document in Word does not know how to use the Word program itself, right? So you have these, basically people who are just basically not trained properly. Now, when we start speaking about e-government, right, Ati, it goes back to the whole idea, I've mentioned this before. You could have the finest government network that's sitting there with all your passport online and your taxes online and everything like that. But if the customer, the citizen, or the businesses of the country, because remember there's CBG, right? Citizens, businesses, and government. If the citizens and the businesses cannot have a good user experience, then the whole e-government platform is all naught.
Collapses, yeah.
Right? And that comes in the Caribbean when, again, we've had these quote-unquote colonial contracts with like a cable and wireless. When I remember reading the original piece of legislation, it said cable and wireless crown agents. And these guys refused to build out proper networks. So what we have is that we cannot get broadband services to rural communities or disadvantaged communities in some cases. And without that, we could never have a truly good e-government experience, because you want every citizen to be able to have access to online services. And e-government, beyond having an efficient government operating, it speaks to providing these online services for citizens and businesses, and even some government entities who can now interact and reduce transaction costs along the way. And that is what's missing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bev.
I want to jump in long time, but so one can go online and apply for a US visa from start to end, and then go to the embassy for their appointment if it's a first-time applicant, and do their interview. And people do that. And they go and do what they have to do. On the other hand, if you want to get a passport in most countries, it is still a paper-based operation. You can't go online and apply for your passport and just go to the passport office and collect it. That cannot happen. You still have to go to the passport office, join a line, collect a form, do everything as you were doing it back in 1960.
Go to the treasury and pay for the form. Go to the treasury and pay for the passport.
Go to the treasury, pay for the form, come back. A lot of waste of time. And all of this can be done online. So when Richardson sets up his system and rolls out his fancy network, there is nobody to use it. And the gatekeepers are clueless. So the person sitting in the office behind the desk, although the network is in place for me to apply for my passport online, the person sitting at the desk is going to tell me, I can't do it. I still have to come and get the form and go to the treasury and pay the money and come back and pick up this and go there and do this and do that. Because the person sitting at the desk is technically dunce. And the
Not
person
technically dunce.
No.
And is technologically dunce. And the person that he or she reports to is dunce times 2. And the person that person reports to is dunce times 3, right?
Hold a second. If I may, I have to stop you guys. And I think it's becoming...
No, don't stop me, Richardson.
No, hold a second.
Do not stop me, Richardson. Richardson, do not stop me. Let me finish. I did not stop him, George. George, I let Richardson finish his point. I want to finish mine. I will not be intimidated by you men in this forum. Let me finish talk. Okay, and that's a joke. Laugh, please. That is a joke. I'm not serious about that because we don't do that here. That's a joke, right? But let me finish. And it goes right up to the senior person in the department. So there is nobody to force the application of the technology in these departments. So those who have to use the service are continuously at a disadvantage. And that is the broken part of the system we need to fix.
Well, let me let Richie go in, and I want to say something.
Yeah, let me go through the various components of getting e-government online, and I'm going to stick to 4 of them. I wouldn't go into the granular parts. But the first thing you usually want to do is to do a business process re-engineering of the entire government, right? The other thing you want to do is to do a change management process, right? And in any of this whole change management process is the whole idea of getting buy-in from the folks who are working in these ministries.
Who are going to use it.
Who are going to use it and who are going to be the how would you say it? The shepherds of the whole process, right? And the third one was what I was dealing with earlier was the whole idea of the connectivity. So we could put in the finest network, right? That's there sitting there. But if you do not have those 3 components coming together, right, then it's all for naught, right? Now, I don't want to take on the whole idea of calling people saying, you know, somebody's a dunce or they're dumb or something like that. Everybody.
I didn't say dumb. Technologically dunce.
No, even that aspect of it is insulting to some of our government employees. And I'll tell you why. Because the whole idea behind for this thing to be successful is to have training, right? Now, if somebody cannot go through the training and absorb what you're trying to teach, well, then you could say they have challenges. I'll call it challenges.
They're dumb.
Right? Yeah, you see, it's all well and good to sit at a certain level and call people.
I want to come in, you know. I want to come. I've been waiting patiently.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
Because I'm telling you, because recently I was at a function during the summer where the Minister of Education in St. Vincent were begging the teachers a training session put on by the Canadians, part of which was ICT training. And the minister was begging the teachers to please stop being afraid of the ICT, as they call it. I hate to call it ICT. I call it digital technology, right? So after he finished, I went out and I interviewed him. He says, yes, Jerry, we have a serious problem with the whole question of our teachers gravitating towards using the technology. I said, but all of these teachers have phones. He pointed, he says, look, one of the teachers who was trained in Taiwan to teach this, talk to her. And when I spoke to her, she said the same thing to me, that the children are way ahead of the teachers. And so in the classroom, when the teachers are holding back, the children are pressing forward and the teachers does not know how to help them. All right? I was at Cantor's conference earlier, and it became obvious that it's a problem in the region, that although the region is being exposed to all of this technology, there still is a fear in the region. And a lot of the fear comes from the people who must make the decision to implement the technology. And I believe we are wasting a lot of opportunity because often when monies are given to our region for the implementation of technology, it is given to government. It is seen that if you give government the systems, that it will work. Let me give an example. Take Carry Pass, which should have provided us with a card so that when, instead of standing up in lines, we simply go through and swipe our cards and go. Millions of dollars were spent on that equipment. It is still not in place. Again, because there is a fear, and especially to my mind, the older people who must make the decisions, they are fearful of it. They pass this fear along, and this region is being left behind. Look at apps. again, something that came out of the same Canton meeting. You could do the best app in the region, or people are not using them. When you come to New York or to the States or somewhere, everybody wants an app to do something. We have good apps in the region, but for some reason, our people are not gravitating towards using apps. So there's a fundamental problem at the lower level where we need to get people to stop being afraid of technology. They're comfortable using the phone, sending a message here, there, and everywhere, but that's where it stops. Our businesses are not using the technology today that is available to help their businesses forward. So it's a serious issue. I don't think that the leadership of our region, both in terms of political and the business leadership of our region, understands the implications of these things. And again, if it's a region where we're scoring so low in math speaks to the issue of logic. Logic speaks to the issue of technology. That's what technology is about. So if our people are not thinking like that, then we really have a problem. Because if you're telling me, for example, Richie, that you're watching that people still struggling to use Microsoft Word, something that's been in since 1995 or somewhere around there, 98, then we're in real trouble.
Very good. So
if you put computers in front of most of the cabinet members of the region, but then and the computers are not on and there's no screen, more than half of them wouldn't know how to turn it on.
Seriously. Seriously.
and that is true.
That is true.
So I mean,
Jerry, as far as the app is
they're
concerned,
not just dumb, Richie. I'm sorry, they're not just dumb. They're not interested. Because they have found a way to control even the persons who have higher level of intellect, even the persons who have trained, even the professionals, and they control them with one thing: greed for money, power, and position. And so the technology doesn't even come into the mix. I'm afraid that is why it was sifted and filtered out of the education and out of the economy. People go to a cash register now. Cash registers are really marvels. They track, they adjust in inventory, they communicate with each other, they communicate with the storeroom, with the person placing the order for the next shift, and they do that in a millisecond. We don't understand that. We think it's a cash register. It's not a cash register.
Richie, you go to something?
But we don't engage what's around us, all right? We don't even engage what's bad that's around us. So I don't think we're really interested in engaging what's good that's around us either. We live in sewage. We live in dirty, filthy places still. A lot of our people do, you know. We live without plumbing. A lot of our people do. And that does not seem to bother us. So you think apps going to bother people?
I see we have 2 minutes if my clock is
we
right.
got 2 minutes, yeah.
So Jerry, I hear you about the apps, but I think one of the beauty about apps is a sort of democratic process, right? And if the app is really interesting and useful to people, they would use it. If they're not using it, there's an issue.
I asked you a question across the region, Richie. No, I asked you a question across the region. There are so many apps out there. Which app is the most used app?
Well, I guess WhatsApp.
Thank you. WhatsApp.
Absolutely.
No, but the more critical question is, what is it used for?
Yeah.
What's the net contribution to the value chain of Caribbean life and culture?
Exactly. Well,
there's a lot of that out there that can do that.
Yeah,
a lot. But we have to wrap it though, and it's grown a very interesting program tonight. Actually, I mean, we went from here to there, but we really covered some good ground tonight, and that information from Dominica will probably resonate in my mind as I lie down tonight, because some of that stuff I've heard about Dominica tonight just ain't making sense. But we also have to thank God that we have this technology that allows us to be wherever we are in our own homes tonight and still talk to those of you who have been listening to us, most of you I suspect via Facebook. George is going to sleep. Let me wake him up to tell him that we're ready to go. And folks, once again, all you suspects, thanks again for joining us for another rousing edition of Mek We Chat. So long.